Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Powers, welcome. I want to concentrate a little bit on Central America. I know you recently made a trip to the Northern Triangle countries. We have a crisis on our border. I know the administration, many members are in a state of denial, but we've been apprehending about 6,000 people per day over the last 3 months. The human depredation, the human traffickers, the open lanes for additional human trafficking and drug smuggling. It's a crisis on our border. I know the Vice President went down to Central America looking for root causes. I just want to ask you, did you discover or did you come to any conclusions in terms of what the root cause of that outmigration is?
Well, I know you know, because I know how carefully you're tracking this, but a complicated stew of forces. I mean, some communities, you meet with people where gang violence, where literally there'd be bodies on the streets because of gang violence, where our programs attempt to reduce the number of homicides, knowing that that would be a reason. I can't even imagine being a mother and handing one's child over to a coyote, but it's a level of desperation sometimes around physical security that is acute. And the economic, of course, is the main, especially in the wake of COVID.
Let me just quick interject. I want to let you finish answering the question. When you mentioned gangs, one fact that's really not very widely known of the unaccompanied children that are coming into this country being apprehended, 70% are male, 70% are 15, 16, or 17. That would be the prime age for recruitment into gangs, things like MS-13. So, but anyway, that's not a fact that we're focusing on very much when we're talking about the crisis. But go on, you're talking about the gangs in Central America.
Well, just offering that as one source. I actually keep a handy chart, and I'm sure you've seen some like it, but just we actually have crunched the data. You don't need to see the specifics, but just in looking at any country of the three, looking at in which areas is it by virtue of, is it some hurricane aftershock, in which countries, when we look at intention to migration surveys, is it unemployment or perceived economic despair? In what cases, again, is it a spike in homicides? So it's very important that we tailor our programming per community in accordance with what those actual causes are, which also fluctuate, of course, with time.
Again, I was asking kind of root cause. I've got my own ideas on this. Let me just kind of throw something at you. When I went down there in 2015, I was surprised at the reaction we got from the presidents of both Honduras and Guatemala when they said, we're dealing with corruption and impunity. And corruption, I understand. I think we all understand. We were talking about that earlier. Impunity, I was kind of, what do you mean by that? Well, impunity springs from the fact that you have the drug cartels that are untouchable. I mean, literally untouchable. That then spreads over the rest of society, where you end up with the gang activity and you end up with the extortionists, shooting a cab driver, burning his cab if they don't hand over the ransom. The drug cartels exist in Central America because we shut down, to a great extent, the drug trafficking through the Caribbean and redirected through Central America. The drug cartels exist because of America's insatiable demand for drugs. So if you're looking for a root cause of all the problems in Central America, almost all of them, it's America's insatiable demand for drugs. So if we're not willing to recognize that fact, we're not addressing the root cause. And we don't, quite honestly, we don't stand any chance whatsoever wiping out those drug cartels. They are just endemic. The communities rely on the profits of the drug cartels. So we have to keep that in mind. So when you're proposing $860 million for Central America, where's that going to go? How is that not just go down a hole and completely wasted if we're not willing to recognize what the true root cause is? And my final point is, when I was down there, the presidents of both Honduras and Guatemala begged our delegation, please fix your laws. This is not helpful to us to lose our future. I saw a recent interview with the new president of El Salvador making the same point. This is not a successful economic model for Central America to lose all of our people. So I guess I would just encourage this administration and you, as you're looking at how you design these programs, please recognize the true root cause, which is America's insatiable demand for drugs. Recognize that our open border, our pull factors, is not helpful. It's destructive to Central America. If we really want to help them out, we need to secure our border. We need to stop that flow of their citizens.
Thank you. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Menendez, Ranking Member Risch, and in particular, Administrator Power. Thank you for your testimony and for your continued service to our nation. I am pleased to see the Biden administration's budget request for USAID includes investments to address the ongoing COVID-19 global pandemic and to bolster our ongoing role in global health, foreign assistance in the Indo-Pacific, specifically to counter China's influence there and in other regions in the world, and demonstrates our commitment to fighting climate change. And I look forward to working with you to improve the effectiveness of USAID, like Senator Johnson, as he was just describing. I, too, have just returned from Guatemala and have a number of questions about how we are going to effectively deliver assistance in a way that will bend the curve of a number of challenging developments there. I visited a shelter for trafficked youth, as did you in your recent trip. And one of the inspiring aspects of that visit was that it was a locally developed and run program. Our assistance to that particular initiative did not require funding to go through a governmental agency. It goes directly to an NGO. So, Administrator, I'd be interested in hearing what you think is a possible strategy for increasing the localization of our assistance programs, devoting a larger share of development assistance funds to supporting initiatives implemented by local partners, and what role additional staff would have in making that possible. And I might, and perhaps this is motivated by that trip, recommend piloting that in a region, for example, Central America, where we lack credible national government partners in development.
Yes, I mean, this is your last point about lacking credible government partners is an important complement, I think, to the exchange I just had with Senator Johnson. I mentioned violence and economic despair, but the governance and corruption trends are really going in the wrong direction, requiring us to think very creatively about how we steward these resources that we hope, again, that you'll be generous enough and the American people will be generous enough to provide in order to deal with those causes of despair and migration that can be tackled within the region. So the question you pose on how to strengthen our relationship with local partners can sound a little bit abstract, a little bit wonky, a little bit sort of inside foreign assistance, like a perfect Samantha Power, Chris Coons exchange. But it's so important because, as I tried to say briefly in my opening statement, it is the essence of whether the development we do is going to be sustained over time. And because we, USAID, want, and you all as well, and the President want to move quickly, often there's just a lot of gravity pulling us toward very large, often US-based contracting partners that may deign to enlist local partners as part of the overall contract or grant, but fundamentally the investments are not made in that internal capacity and that ability to have the accounting capacity, the ability to comply with USAID's regulations, which many of which are in place in order to be responsive to the need for oversight that you have. So the shorter answer is, I think we're off to a good start with the New Partnerships Initiative and the Local Works Initiative, which both, again, I think came out of a partnership between USAID and Congress. I think that we need to try to lower the barriers of entry because it is so onerous to work with USAID for these small local organizations. And we need to invest in the internal capacity those organizations have to meet the legitimate oversight questions and challenges that we absolutely have to retain in order to do our jobs as stewards.
Well, I look forward to working with you on tackling USAID's procurement process, the challenges both in terms of regulations and staffing that you face in terms of trying to be flexible so that you can better respond to changing circumstances, such as we're seeing in Ethiopia or Afghanistan or Haiti, where developments challenging changes in circumstances require more than just disaster aid, but require us to change prioritization or strategies around development. If I might, just a quick last question, Mr. Chairman. The Development Finance Corporation is a new tool that through its loan programs can reduce the cost of financing development by leveraging private sector resources. And the Senate just passed an important bipartisan bill that supports the expansion of the DFC's lending authority to enable our competition with China, something Chairman Menendez, Ranking Member Risch really championed through this committee. I'd be interested in your views on how you ensure that the DFC remains focused on development and what your role will be in strengthening the DFC as we expand its capacity to compete on behalf of the United States in partnership with the private sector against the increasing influence that China is having around the world.
I know I probably don't have time really to respond in detail, but just to say that, you know, as a kind of Rip Van Winkle here who was gone for 4 years and now is back in government, I do think the enhanced capacity you all have given the DFC is, you know, from my standpoint, you know, the newest, freshest tool in the toolbox. Your continued message that this is a development finance institution is really important. I didn't have a chance, Mr. Chairman, when you were asking about the sort of full set of tools in the toolbox on COVID, developing vaccine manufacturing capacity in Africa, where they're importing 99% of vaccines. DFC has just announced a big deal with J&J in South Africa with other international financing bodies. So again, multilateralizing what we do. And that's going to bring more than 500 million doses online coming from South Africa by the end of 2022. I think that's just the beginning. And certainly my impression, and as the vice chair of the DFC, my impression is that that is very much the orientation of the leadership of DFC to meet these needs in developing countries, recognizing that that is going to be profitable for everybody over time.
Thank you. Senator Paul.
Good morning. Are you